welcome to Truth in This Art. I am your host, Rob Lee, and today's guest is the creative director and founder of Currency Studio, Michael Haskins Jr. Welcome to the podcast.
Yo, what's up? What's up? Second time around.
Yeah,
I'm glad to be back.
It even sounds better right now. It sounds more crisp.
It sounds amazing. Second time around in the sense of we went through it one time. Yeah. It wasn't great, and I feel like Rob wants to perfect his craft, so we're back here.
I'm a perfectionist in some ways.
I love it.
So these are going to be questions you've already answered.
It's all good.
Let's get right into it. So for the fine folks out there who are uninitiated, who are undipped, unsaturated, I'm going to call it as many liquid things as possible because we're drinking water. Describe your brand and the significance of the name Currency.
So, Currency Studio is right now it's a multifunctional creative space. And that's more like that's just the fast term that I use now, right? But it's a lot more than a multifunctional creative space. It's a space ran by two individuals that we're just experimenting, man. We're just doing crazy stuff. I mean, we're doing whatever we want when we can do it. Yeah. Trying to just really use as much of our capacity as we can to just do creative things and to drive the standard up for creatives in the city, right? Like, we do things with history in mind. We do things with, when people look at it, what we're doing 10 years from now, it's like, wow, that really moved history in Baltimore. It moves people, their mental, everything. And the significance of Currency is, growing up, my mother worked in banking, and my father, he worked the world, right? Yeah. So it's money was always a state of mind for me, but in a conflicting way, right? So I wanted to use currency in a positive way, and also flip it in the sense of that's where our slogan comes from, respect your wealth, and then now we have the slogan, you are your most valuable currency, right? So it's taking money that we do all these negative things for, but then also turning it into no, you are the currency. Yeah. You are the currency, right? Just like there's USD, just like there's yen, no, you as a person, you are currency, and, respect yourself and understand that your exchange is valuable as that piece of paper that you value so much. I think it's a legitimate way to look at it once you dive deeper into it, because I think too often we get into a spot where we really value ourselves on what someone else is putting out there, but it's no, you're invaluable. You're literally the thing. You can't put a dollar amount on you. With you, there's no exchange. Yeah, one of one. Literally with you, there is no exchange. And I don't think people think about that enough, right? It's a person created the dollar. Yeah. And that's another thing that's really significant to me with currency is I really love money. But I love the actual paper. Yeah. Because have you ever looked at it? Yeah. Show me designs. Show me composition that is as good as that green and natural piece of paper in your pocket. That's true. Nothing. That is true. Think about how long ago this was designed. Yeah. Somebody had to sketch that. Somebody had to refine that. Somebody created that and put it on a piece of paper. So to me, when I see a $1 bill, I'm looking at that shit and I'm wait, even this itself is worth more than, imagine if I had to put a tag on that. Right? It's if somebody was how much is this worth? Me as a designer, as a creative, I can never say, oh, that's only $1. Right. I think about the fact that someone took all this time and the detail and the numbers. It's some of our greatest fonts are in that.
This is true. And it's very, very little about that has changed over the time, what have you. You might get something that looks oh, okay, this paper feels a little different, or they now have this blue band or some variation. But for the most part, it stood the test of time.
But think about that. It now has this blue band, right? Yeah. it's becoming cooler.
Yes. Yeah.
You feel like it's becoming cooler. Like this piece of paper is becoming cooler. Right? And it's only becoming cooler because somebody set the foundation a long time ago.
One of the things that I kind of joke about, and I think we're in that spot now because you can tap your card, you can do all of these different things to pay for something, and we play with the valuation of things, right? I like sci-fi movies. It's like, oh yeah, I'm paying you this many credits. And it's just like, yeah, you guys chase these things or what have you. It's not what you think it is. You know, when you're looking at money, it's not what you think it is. It's so many other things other than just a means of paying for this or paying for this piece of equipment or paying for a coffee or what have you. It's more than that. And I think that's where people get lost at sometimes.
But yeah, that's like because people don't really know history, right? I mean, well, people don't do the research to know what it really is or what it really stemmed from, right? But I don't suggest people do. It's too much.
No.
Mentally, if you want to be mentally unstable and not believe anything ever and be uncomfortable, then do some research.
Yeah.
But if you want it to be easy, don't do research.
I mean, it is it's linseed and cotton. I learned that in my biology class. It's
Come on.
With some of these things we're chasing that some people may have picked back in the day. But let's not dive too deep in that.
Come on.
So let's talk about the what the day-to-day looks like for you. I know it varies, right? But what does that day-to-day look like for you? Like a typical situation, or maybe even a week to week. Let's look at that. How does a typical week for you look like?
That's a horrible question for me right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Be honest.
Yeah. Well, I wake up at 6:50 a.m.
Okay.
Sometimes I stay awoke. Sometimes I sit down and meditate and fall back to sleep. And typically I'm back up before 8 a.m. or 9 a.m. 9 a.m. being very late. If I'm up after 9 a.m., I'm really upset with myself. After that, 9 times out of 10, I'll go sit at this big, beautiful table we have in our home.
Yeah.
And literally just get stuck on my computer or sketching or working on graphics or working on a client job. Or just creating something, whether it's mentally or on paper or on the computer. But I spend a lot of time in my home if I'm not at the studio.
Yeah.
If I'm not at the studio, I'm at Good Neighbor. Right.
I've seen a lot of images and videos recently.
That's my second home.
Yeah.
But other than that, man, or I spend a lot of time just on the streets. Like I'm out all the time, whether I'm looking for graffiti or I'm just walking. I mean, that's a big thing for me on a day-to-day. Like I always try to find time to just walk the city in any way that I can.
So speak more on that. Like, what are you like kind of gaining from that? What are you getting from that? Is it a thing to give you some degree of peace, or is it, you know, what is that?
Yeah, well, it does give me peace, but it's also, I take pride in like seeing the city differently, right? I take pride in using the city differently.
Okay.
Like I love walking up and down Jones Falls. Right, yeah. Just watching that water current. I'm on foot a lot, right? Yeah. And whether it's a peace of mind or whether it's just me trying to collect my thoughts, or then I love graffiti. I'm the guy that can tell you that, oh, that's still wet, or oh shit, that wasn't there. You know, like, oh, there's an open spot that'll be hit by next week.
Yeah.
Right, I'm that guy that will tell you a lot about graffiti. I'm actually really embarrassed about how much I can tell you about graffiti in Baltimore, you know, because it's like I don't get paid to go out there and look for that stuff. But it brings me a lot of joy, man, to just see people that I don't know or some that I do know, you know, hit the streets and do cool shit, right? It's like the mystery of it, right? I enjoy that. I enjoy the thrill of it. So, yeah, I mean, it depends on what my duties are, right? Like if I have product that I need to make, then my focus is going to the studio and getting the product done.
Laser focus, yeah.
Yeah, if I don't have many orders, my focus is just like building relationships. So if I'm on the streets, 9 times out of 10, I might run into somebody one day, have a great conversation, right? Teach somebody something or learn something from somebody.
Yeah.
Like, I'm literally a person that tries not to predetermine my days, because I feel like you miss a lot in that. And fortunately, I'm in a space right now where I'm just floating, man. You know, and like me floating like brings a lot of opportunities to me. Yeah. And it also creates a lot of opportunities for the people around me. And I'm taking that sacrifice to use my time to just create opportunities that wouldn't be there if there wasn't somebody floating.
I envy that. Like I had a period in which I was able to do that, and now everything is a little bit more, it has some flexibility, but it has parameters around it too.
The regiments.
Yeah. So it's like, all right, I know that I'm going to record during these hours. I know I'm going to do the day job setup during these hours. And pretty much I have some flexibility within that, but pretty much I know that these are things that I have to get done, and it really doesn't stop until I decide when it's going to stop. So I think one of the things that I've learned, because what I'm hearing from you, like, you going out, you're getting things that are fueling you as a creator, what have you. It may not be point A to B, but it's filling it in.
Yes.
And I recently, about a month ago, took a little bit of a sabbatical. I was like, I need to get away from Baltimore for a bit just to kind of recharge and refocus, see art in a different place.
Yeah.
And that felt really good. And then when I got back, because I felt like the shows were kind of suffering a little bit, I was like, this took a lot out of me. And when I got back, I was like, yeah, I'm back. You know, like I was up there like that last day. I was working on something. Like I didn't have anything to do. Took my laptop to a coffee shop, started researching all of these different guests, and it made those forthcoming shows that much better. But I needed to step away from it for a little bit to like fall back in love with it, I guess.
Yeah, well, let me. It's so crazy. Let me piggyback on that, because like another thing that I really take pride in is like living a life in Baltimore that I feel like I don't need to get away from.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I don't wake up ever in this city and be like, I need to get out of here. Because I use the city differently. Mm-hmm. It's just simple as that, right? Like, I go to the most peaceful places in the city. Mm-hmm. When I eat at a nice restaurant, I probably will eat at that restaurant during the day. I'm not going at after hours when there's a bunch of people there that want people to see them eating. You know, it's like we just do it differently. Like everything we do is different. Like we really cherish like the people here that we know, right? And it's like when we go places, we know when to go, we know when not to go, we know how to put our heads down and like be in that moment. And well, me at least. So like I really feel like there's one thing that I live by. Like Fabulous said this in a rap. He said, yo, you gotta, he said the word nigga, but he was like, yo, you got a nigga at home feeling like he out of town. So like that's the most beautiful feeling that I can create for myself, right? Like even when we're home, like I feel like I'm in my favorite place. I feel like I'm in a gallery. I feel like I'm in a museum. I feel like I'm in a boutique sometimes. I feel like she's in there making pottery and shit. Like I feel like I'm in a design studio, right? It's like, I'm like, why are we paying for a studio when I'm in the house? You know? So it's like we've created these spaces that like we're on like an extended vacation, right? I mean, we still got shit to do, right? We're still hurting in some ways, you know, but at the end of the day, I think we figured out a way to like be happy here. Mm-hmm.
I think it's configuration too. Like, you know, for me, I have these conversations with people who, I don't know how you can do that. You're always so busy. It's like you're doing two different things. It's like, I enjoy it. You know, it's just like sometimes you need that brief kind of recalibration, I guess. But I look at my things are set up in a way that works for me, and it works very effectively for me. I have it configured in a way. It's like there's some form in this madness, and not everyone is going to get what or why you're doing a certain thing in a certain way. Yeah,
I actually hate when people say that to me. Mm-hmm. Like when people say like, I don't understand how you get so much time to do certain things. I'm like, yo, because this is my job. Like, it's my job to create, right? It's my job to think about like what's next. It's my job to like have an answer for people when they're in a situation where they're trying to figure out like what's the best decision to make creatively, right? Like my decisions aren't based off of what I'm seeing on the internet. My decisions are based off of that walk that I took 2 months ago, and I saw this black and orange bird on a tree branch, and the water was floating, and like I had a moment there, you know. So when somebody's like asking me about stuff, I'm thinking about those moments in my life and pulling references from the moments in my life to like create.
You know,
right?
you have those, you know what I mean? So, like, someone can try to do a cookie cook, because you see it all the time, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, I'm going to do that same thing just like this person. It's like, it doesn't work.
Because that's a whole other conversation, but it's because they're just taking from life. They're not giving back to life. And, like, that's one thing that I try to do. Like, when I'm taking these walks, or, like, I'm on the streets, and I also feel like I'm giving myself to my surroundings, right? Like, I walk a lot, and I go places a lot, and I move slow a lot. Sometimes it's just for people to see me, and that's just out of grace, right? Like, I think about the young black kid on the bus stop that like sees me walking a certain way, and like, yo, he look different,
Right.
Like, what's up with him?
Yeah.
Because there's not a lot of people walking around staring at buildings and
Just
looking
taking
at
it
graffiti and taking pictures and just taking it in, right? And like when people see that, I feel like they think, and they're like, wait, maybe I should slow down a little bit and like take this in.
So is mindful awareness a thing for you?
What? Mindful awareness is everything for me.
Absolutely.
But I think it has its gift and it has its curse, right? I'm a little too mindful of things. I'm a little too aware of things, right? Where I'm very distracted with myself and not like focused on like reality or like other things that need to be done, because I'm just like so hypersensitive and hyper aware of like everything that I'm always taking in.
Yeah.
All right. So like, yeah, it's definitely a thing for me. I think it should be more for people, because they would pay more attention to like the things they do and like how they're putting themselves out here. They need to understand that a lot of things that they're like receiving is why they lack.
They're receiving these
mentally.
things unchecked. And it's like, what is it? The Saul Williams thing. He's like, your diet is everything you consume.
Bingo. Yo, it's crazy. I was thinking about that today. I was like, me and Erica, we were in Ulta, right? And I was like, damn, like, it's crazy how a woman will be like, what do you use on your face? What creams do you use, right? Or like, what do you put in your hair? But they'll never be like, hey, what's your diet? Before they go and spend all this money on shit.
Yeah.
They'll never ask what you put on your inside. The first thing they will do is say, what do you put on your exterior?
Yeah.
And then they'll go and consume these things and not get the results that the person that they got to answer from, because they were asking for the wrong answers.
And almost like it feels like easier too.
It's definitely easier. And they make it so much easier. Like, we're in there, I'm like, yo, this is so genius. I'm looking at Kylie on a box, and I'm like, they made it so easy for these people to not really actually care about themselves, just care about another person and buy what they tell you to buy to look remotely like
It's
them.
what is it? This is the thing. It's the I just lost the thought. Yeah. Actually, let's just move into the next one. I just lost the thought. That's what I'm doing these days.
It'll come back, but it's insane. Shit is crazy.
So, why did you choose to go into this path? What was the? Is I'm getting a grasp on it, but why did you choose to go into this path? Like, I want to have a brand. I want to have all of these different areas that I'm working in. Obviously, there's a component of you're interested in creation, you're interested in art, you're interested in a lifestyle element and in fashion, obviously. But why to work in it, and for how long have you been working within it?
So I didn't really have a choice, right? Like, I grew up, my father had an urban apparel line. It was called Butterwear, right? He sold to the streets, the hood. The hood guys wore Butterwear, right? If you wore Butterwear, people knew what you had on you, right?
Yeah.
You were of some status on the streets. And that's what I saw. That's what I grew up in. That's all I saw, you know, like whether it was being T-shirts getting printed or whether it was being in a factory in D.C. or whether it was picking cotton, right? And watching my father build relationships, watching him have a team, watching him have a storefronts, you know, watching him sell clothes for a living is all I saw, right? But growing up, I was always attracted to the simple things, right? Like advertisement, like branding. My father was a shopper, right? So when we go to a Louis Vuitton or we go to a Gucci, I'm like, all the clothes are cool, but these stores are immaculate, right? Like, why are they bringing me water? You know, like just stuff like that. It's just like seeing all this. So clothing was second nature to me because that was what I grew up seeing. But it was so second nature that I really didn't care about the clothes. So I started to care about everything around it. So like the fashion part, the art part, the model part, the lifestyle part, just like all of that, right? So I don't want to say I didn't have a choice, but I've been doing it my whole life. You know?
So it's one of the things that's interesting, like the personalities and the characters that are around it. You mentioned like Louis Vuitton or what have you. You had the show on Gucci or what have you. I mean, you had the movie coming out about Gucci. You had the Versace show, and then you had Halston or what have you. Like these personalities, and it's just like you're glamorizing all of these different things. Like it's not about, you don't see like, oh, we're doing this runway thing, or we have this clothes, or we're stitching. You see a little bit of that, but it's like the people, the things that are surrounding it, the lifestyle that goes along with it, this opulence.
Because that's what makes it.
Yeah.
It's not about nothing else. And I think people forget that. Nothing matters. Like, how creative you are doesn't matter. How much money you have matters, but doesn't really matter. Because even if you have a lot of money, you want the cool people around you.
Yes.
You want the personalities around you, right? You can be very creative, but you got to have the trendsetters around you. The personalities. It always comes back down to the personalities.
What models are going to wear this stuff?
What models are going to wear this stuff? Personalities.
Yeah. What stores are going to have this?
What stores are going to have it? People had to grow up to want to. It's like, it's so much. Then it comes into clientele. It's all about personalities. All this stuff is about people. Everything is about people.
So what are some of the challenges you face in that brand development, like kind of space or what have you? I remember we had a conversation that when we had that first conversation, there was something you said, I was like, we're on the same page about, they see the finished product. They don't see everything that goes into it.
Yeah, I mean, no, nobody ever will.
Right.
But right now, my biggest challenge is we do so much, right? We have so many. My biggest challenge is our lack of focus due to how much potential we have in so many areas, right? Which is a good thing and also can be a bad thing, right? It's like, it's a great thing because, damn, we could just wake up and do whatever we want to do. But there's a bad thing because consumer-wise, it's like people want to like follow something that they can understand, right? And I think right now we're in that phase where people can't really understand what we are, who we are, because of how much we're doing. So our biggest challenge right now is formulating that platform, or just making it to where though people understand who we are, what we do, how we do it, why we do it, where we do it. Right. So like formulating like the history of it. So like people who are just finding out about us, because like our goal is we have to grow. Right. So we have to grow outside of the people that been following us for 10 years already because we went to high school together, because they used to shop with us at a store, or because they heard about us on a local platform. Right. So it's like they understand it because they can see it, or they hear stories from so and so, or they hear stories from a friend of a friend that has been in our studio. So it's kind of like they have the idea, right? Or they can even come to the studio. So it's like, how do we start to bridge that gap for people who never heard of us, right? How do we start to bridge that gap for people who have found out about me because I just do artwork? They might not know nothing about the clothing, right? So it's like, okay, but when they find out about that, how does that lead to the history of where I started and how I got here? Because I think that's very important.
Is some of the, I don't know if collaboration, let's just say the relationships, I'll call it relationships, with like the Revival, with Good Neighbor and all, is that part of that effort, or? Yeah,
that's a big part of that effort. But that's all, it's a big part of that effort, but definitely very organic. Like I will say, prior to COVID, before I had these strong relationships with a Revival or with a Good Neighbor, I was in a place where I was like, in order for us to make next steps, I would love to start to collaborate with like companies and or people that I have a love for or respect for, to start helping us gain more eyes, or more awareness around the city, like get into another personality, right? Get into another characteristic for, them to also share our stories with others, like them, which is really interesting because it's a whole different perspective, right? Like you start to tap into just people who have a different walk of life and they like see currency differently. They see it differently than I see it sometimes. Like, it's crazy how like when I meet people that I haven't known for 10 years and they hear about currency, or like they've seen currency is like a big thing to them. They're like, whoa, you don't, like, this is insane. Like, like what we see is a little dingy studio and not much money in our bank accounts, and like us trying to figure stuff out. But there's people like, whoa, you've been doing this for how long? Like, this is amazing. This looks like some shit I've seen in LA and New York. It's like, I want to know you. I want to get to know you and know your story, right? It's like, but the other, the people who've known you for 10 years, even though you grew, to them, they're like, well, they don't got nothing.
He ain't shit.
Like, what, like they not stunting, like that's all they worry about, right? So it's like, so it definitely was effort to start to like grow.
I'll say there's like maybe two people that I respect their opinions, right? And when I went to the Dashery one day and I was going over with my girlfriend and she saw a few of your pieces in there, she was like, this shit is dope, just unsolicited. And I was like, funny that you say that. I'm working on a rescheduled interview with the maker of this.
Nice.
And it was just like that. It was just unsolicited. I didn't say, I'm talking to this dude, what have you, and kind of reaching for it. She's like, no. She's like, one, I know that's super expensive. If I can afford it, I want it in my place. She was like, I need something from him. That was literally what the conversation led to.
Nice. What did she say?
I just remember it was, I'm blanking on, it's like the wood with the horses.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. She's a big fan. Fan.
That's what's up. They are available. You better, Christmas is coming. You better make some priorities.
She's an expensive person, so we'll talk.
It's not that much.
No, that's also like, hey, let's go to the Bygone too.
Yeah, but check that out. Like stuff like that. It's like
we go for the experience. I think that's the biggest thing about it. Like, we don't really care about the money piece of it. It's the experience.
But that's a beautiful place.
Yeah,
it's okay.
Yeah.
But it's so funny that like the same person who wants to go to Bygone is the person who wants that wood horse.
Yeah.
Person who goes anywhere else don't want that wood horse. They don't like that's not in there.
You saying we're bougie?
Hey, that's my consumer. That's a person.
Yes.
But that's not I don't look at bougie in a negative connotation, right? I look at bougie as like, I appreciate like the details, or I appreciate like what's going on. Like, when somebody put something into something.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I already know where it's going to go at too. So we'll talk about like that. So what areas of like brand design or building out a brand do you feel are often overlooked? And this is more so from someone who is putting together the brand, not necessarily the people who are the potential consumers. What do you think that people are that they may have like a unsturdy foundation. And what do you think that they overlook in brands that maybe don't do as well as others?
I need you to elaborate on that for me.
So, like, let's say I do a bunch of different podcasts, right?
Yes.
And people have no idea what I'm doing. They're like, oh, just the Rob guy from the art podcast. Like, well, also he does this podcast, but he does this podcast as well. And maybe really putting my brand identity out there, maybe doing too many things at one time. That might be something that I would look at as an opportunity or maybe even a challenge. And there are some places that they have like a good idea, good plan, but maybe not the best people in there running it. That's maybe an area where it's a challenge. There's an area that they can develop on. From your viewpoint, where do you kind of like people like they don't pay enough attention because they're just moving? Maybe they're following a trend or something, or
people don't pay attention to how much of everything is relationship building. Everything, every opportunity, every resource. And that's another thing people overlook too. People overlook like the power of having resources, right? People also overlook just like the time that is put into anything that we do. Yeah. And then geographically, people overlook where we are, right? And why we may have to do things differently than a company that you love this in New York City or in LA or in Paris. I think people overlook, where we stand in the reality of like our economical infrastructure. Yeah.
So I got 2 more questions. See, I'm moving through them.
You can ask 10 more. Man.
I don't have 10 more. I'm not that good at what I do. So for you, describe Baltimore and using that being a creator living in Baltimore. How is that? I mean, you've kind of tapped on it in a few different ways, but be more direct in it. That like describe it because you're out there, you're viewing it, you're seeing all of these interesting images, graffiti, and all of this stuff that in the data banks, and just taking advantage of there's accessibility here, I think, and even touched on like the infrastructure that we have here. So I think all of those things are part of it. But if you will, what is it like, just really plainly, being a creator here?
It's hard. It's very hard, but I think I always think 10, 20 years out, right? So being a creative in Baltimore, to me personally, is really hard because I don't feel like the appreciator for currency lies here. It has to be developed. And unfortunately, we're a part of developing the minds and the characters that are here to receive it how it should be received. And then we're also in a good position because Baltimore is a valuable place right now that people of certain wealth and certain stature are going to start moving, thanks or no thanks to gentrification, right?
It is what it is.
Yeah, it is what it is. And things are changing. So, I mean, it's hard, but at the same time, there's a lot of mental ease for me in the sense of like coming from a brand perspective, right? Like, I want to be a pioneer, which is a really corny thing to say, but I want to be a pioneer, right? So me knowing that we can potentially be a part of like that movement or be that historical play in Baltimore as a brand, just as personalities, just as an image, right? Like, that's what makes me happy about being here. Like, what makes me happy and what I love the most is the fact that I can get to a point to where it's doing 10 years or maybe even 5. Like, you can say McCormick and Smith, and you can say Johns Hopkins, and you can say Under Armour, and then you can say Currency. Yeah. Right? Like, we have that potential because Baltimore doesn't have, like, when you think of New York, you can name 20 brands. Right. Right? Because of just like how far they've gotten or what they've built or how many years that they've been just growing as a brand, right? Like, I feel like I can die, within 50 years and this be like a heritage brand from this city. Like, I feel like I've built enough. I feel like Baltimore has allowed me to build in a way that if I was to go, there are people who wouldn't just let this brand die.
Yeah.
You know, like, I think that, but that's Baltimore, because there's not many people.
Yeah.
There's not many people here who have, like, done something like Currency. So people wouldn't just let it go. People will be like, oh, we got to figure out how to keep this alive because of what it has clearly done for creatives, what it has done for people, imagery. Like, I mean, if you just look at stuff that we done 10 years ago, like, you can wear it tomorrow. So it's like just seeing those facts in that history, and just like we're very conscious of just like wanting to be a brand that is a Maryland, Baltimore brand.
And it almost is a bullet point back to the thing we were talking about earlier about money almost being timeless.
Bingo. Yeah, like that's the whole goal, right?
Yeah.
It's literally the whole goal is to be that, to be next to those names, to be in that same conversation. Like, like people move to cities just to be around certain brands and certain people.
Yeah.
Right? It's like there's a kid who wakes up and he's like, bro, like, I want to live in New York City because Supreme is there, and like people skate for Supreme, and like they don't even want to work for them. They just want to be around that energy, right? It's like my goal is to like be like that. Like, I want people to wake up in another city and be like, yo, we gotta fuck with Baltimore. Oh, that's where Currency is. We definitely gotta go out there.
Absolutely.
You know, like
Absolutely.
that's just that's the energy, right? That's the goal, and it's like, but I think that takes a lot of time. But I think saying all that to say is, I feel like being a designer and a creative in Baltimore gives me, it's not hope. It's more so like, oh, that's what I'm doing. If I was in New York, I'd be like, maybe, you know, who knows? Like, but in Baltimore, it's like, oh no, that's what I'm doing. It's already done.
Yeah.
You know, like that's what it is.
And I think you have to be that here, because we're we're a city that's very focused on being authentic. We don't like bullshit. So if it comes off, like, for people that I see who dive into podcasting, right? This is my thing. This is my realm. You know what I mean? And I get real like, you don't belong here. You're doing 8 other things and shit. And I think the thing that's triggering for me is this is not what you do.
But that's good for you, because when people listen, this is what you do.
Yeah.
It's with our studio shit, right? It's like, yo, you can hear about 20 brands walk into their studio.
Yeah.
No, they don't have one, right?
Right.
So it's like we can't, and I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but it's like, no, we can't even see who you actually are. Like we have the capability to like tell you like, no, come visit us.
Yeah.
Right? You can come into our space. We don't have to say anything. Right? Or we have the capability, we can show you our archives. Right?
Yeah.
Like literally, we can show you our archives, right? So, but I think that's a good thing, right? Because like if a lot of people are doing something that you feel like they shouldn't be doing, that just gives you a better platform for people to point out that you should be doing it. Right? Because if we take like, I give this like example every day, right? It's like if we took every brand in Baltimore and we put every brand in Barney's. Barney's is closed now, right? But yeah. I like to use that example because everybody knows what Barney's is, or you can say like a Nordstrom. If you put every brand in Baltimore in Barney's, and every brand owner went to Barney's to shop, they would buy Currency if they weren't brand owners. I'm talking about in the sense of like all these people, like we create shit that everybody's gonna like. We don't just create for this moment, right? And I think even like owners know that. Like they know they're just doing something for a moment. But if they really had bread to spend and they had to spend it on a Baltimore brand, everybody would go to Currency.
Yeah.
Nowhere else to go.
Yeah. I'm here for it. I love it. I love it.
Yeah. Nowhere else to go. If you really into this, if you really into fashion, if you really into design, if you really like dope shit, if you really like some shit that's gonna last, and you want to like stand next to a person that's wearing some other cool shit, like, you know where you're gonna go.
I mean, it's almost like that same energy where I was having a conversation about this medium, and they were like, "Oh, well, what about this person?" I was like, "Niggas know." That was literally my response. It was like, they know where the real shit is coming from.
Yeah, but
So-
they don't know that unless like, it's like you eat a bunch of bullshit,
Yeah.
and then you eat some real good shit.
It's like, wow,
Like, damn, this is great.
comparative.
Yeah, but if you only got that one thing,
Yeah.
we wouldn't be able to. You wouldn't be able to differentiate the two, right? You just wouldn't be able to do that. So I think it's great. Like, and I love it. Like, I love like there being like plenty of fish in the sea.
Yeah.
I love that.
You got me gassed up over here, man.
Yeah, no, I love that. That's cool, bro. Like, competition is great, but I think that's one of the downfalls about Baltimore is people don't embrace that. Right? People don't embrace like, well, this is just what we do. Like, let's go. If you're a person that if you can't like work with knowing that competition is out there, then you got to do a really good job at not seeing it.
Yeah. You gotta have the blinders on,
Yeah,
and then
you got to.
if you have the blinders on, and if you're doing something that requires you to observe, to be in the city, and to be in a scene, you can't do both.
Bingo.
So it's just like you're sullying what you're attempting to do, and that is impacting your credibility. It's like, you fucking culture vulture or whatever the thing is, you just don't fit.
Bingo.
Last question I got. And again, we've tapped on this a little bit, but I want you to explain the reasoning on it maybe. What's more satisfying? Developing a new product or line, or revealing whatever the product or line is to the public? That was what I came up with today, by the way.
So right now, so selfishly, I'm gonna talk about things that I have going on. I have a brand, and I'm also an artist. I love the process of making art. It's cool. But I do much more enjoy revealing it to the public. I don't love the process of making clothing at all. But it's tough but then I also don't love revealing it to the public because of everything that has to come with that. The marketing, like the advertisement, the social media, like I don't love all of that. So I don't know. That's a tough question, man. I really can't.
Because it's like wearing two hats.
Yeah, it's tough. And the clothing, when it comes to revealing it to the public, it drives me emotionally.
Yeah.
So I can't really I'm so attached to the clothing part, right? That it's kind of hard revealing to the public, but I also don't love the process. So it's like a double-edged sword for me in that area. So the only place that I'm really I have a set answer is I love to reveal the art to the public.
That's honest.
A lot more than it's. Yeah.
I think it's really honest because sometimes going through it's like there is a painstaking element to get to that point where it's like, I'm working on this. Fuck, it took me this long to do this. I had to go back and do this, and then I didn't get this fabric in this textile in at a certain time, and I had to use something that I may not have wanted, or whatever. All of the things that go into it, right? Or got to re-record this interview with this asshole, and and when it goes out, you might get lukewarm response. You might get something that's really great, but you have that almost that, at least for me, almost that relief that's all right, that part is done. I've done everything I'm supposed to do. But then it feels like you're back to doing work. It's all right, how many posts I'm going to do for this episode? Who am I going to share this episode with? What are the analytics going to look like? Are the sponsors going to be happy? All of these different things. And it feels like those things aren't connected to what the actual creation process is. But inherently they are. They're connected to it, but it just doesn't feel that way sometimes.
Yeah. That's all that's so I don't know. That shit stresses me out even thinking about it. It does. It's I don't know. It's tough.
Yeah.
It stresses me out thinking about all that other stuff. I don't like thinking about all that other stuff.
Then we'll leave that.
Yeah.
We'll leave that where it's at. So that was actually my last question. So any plugs? Anything you got coming up that you want to talk about? Any website, social media, all of that good stuff? Feel free. And thank you. I feel this is better than our previous one.
Thank
actually.
you.
Yeah.
Really? The other one was bad?
I like the other one. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's just like, this is for me to listen to. It's like, yeah, I got the dirt. No.
Nice, yeah. Well, yeah, so, hey, man, thank you for having me. I appreciate you having me. And, you know, even outside of podcasting, if you ever want to sit down and talk, I'm here for you.
Absolutely.
I think you have good talks. I think you got the voice for this shit, too.
Well, thank you.
But other than that, like, I'll plug Currency Studio, currencystudio.us. On Instagram, sorry, you can read it's.
Yeah, let's just right back.
Yeah, so you can visit currencystudio.us to shop. You can also visit currencystudio.us to make an appointment, and you can also go to @currencystudio on Instagram. My personal Instagram is Currency Michaels, and up and coming, depending on when are you putting this podcast out?
Probably like Feb-ish?
February?
Yeah.
Okay, well, shit, I got a art thing coming up, but this will be after that. But yeah, other than that, just look forward to crazy things from Currency Studio, and, you know, reach out to us to visit the studio, shop, check us out, you know, tell your friend about us, whatever.
Yeah, so there you have it, folks. For Michael Haskins Jr. of Currency Studio, I am Rob Lee, saying there's art in and around Baltimore. Just got to look for it.